Hello and welcome back, and before we start today's video I want to talk about the subject of money, Wonga, the old lolly. I want to talk about what this device here, the 1290FX, which starts at 5 grand, actually is worth. Because let's face it, 5 grand is both a big number and a small number in the grand scheme of things. To put that into perspective, do you know on Exchange and Mart right now you can get yourself a lovely little 2001 red Fiat Panda that includes the CD player for that sort of money? Have I not won you over yet? What about 3 grand for a field, a little patch of land in a field in Cheshire, just 0.005 acres going up to auction? You might get lucky and win, and you'll still have 2 grand left over to buy your own tent and a bucket. Alternatively, if you're more of a highbrow, perhaps you'd like to hire Neil Farage for 4 grand. You know, that money's on the table, and not only that, but the grand you save, you can buy yourself some friends. Alternatively, why not go travelling? We all like a holiday, so why don't you go ahead and take a cab from London to Berlin and back, and you'll still be in on that 5 grand number, but I have no idea how much you're going to have to pay for the tip. That is right, this is QNAP's new 12-bay flash desktop solution. Now, that word flash I quite like, because quite frankly, this is the most highfalutin thing I've ever featured on the channel. Now, I have to put a little disclaimer on the front of that. Yes, I'm talking desktop. I have had a few more powerful rack mounts than this here in the studio, but this, in terms of desktop, is by far both the most powerful NAS I've ever had here in the studio, and moreover, by far one of the most upgradable in a number of different ways. And because the reason I really wanted to focus in on that 5 grand number at the beginning of the video was quite simply that this system, ranging with wherever you go for all of the little bits and bobs in terms of upgrades, from 5 grand to 8 or 9 grand, is still ludicrously low price for what it is. And once you look at the kind of flash servers that this thing is going up against are knocking around for 15 to even 20 or even 25,000 pounds, this system in PCIe Gen 4x4 with the option of going into hundreds of gigabit Ethernet network connectivity externally is genuinely groundbreaking, with a CPU that has not seen the inside of populist NAS up until now, at least for the most part in the sort of brands that we talk about here. So there's a lot of big that at the beginning there. So this is the TSH1290FX. It is a 12-bay U.2 flash server. Now, what does all of that I've just said mean? Well, first and foremost, U.2 is kind of a more higher capacity and more evolved version of traditional SSDs, and a combination of SAS connectivity and NVMe level storage. It combines it into this super fast storage module. And what I've just said there is a tremendous caveman oversimplification, but just bear with me. Now, with that, this system also arrives with a stupendously powerful CPU, starting at 8 cores and going all the way up to 16 cores. Alongside that is the first PCIe Gen 4 equipped NAS I've ever talked about here in the studio, and they didn't just slam 1 slot in there, they slammed 4 slots in there, and the individual U.2 storage bays as well are PCIe 4x4 each, with adapters available that we'll talk about later on. So that is a lot of big talk there at the beginning, and the box is super dull. Let's be straight, this product is so fantastically enterprise that even as a desktop, it's still arriving in the kind of boxes that a rack mount would arrive with. There's this big label. We don't really care about that, because let's face it, if you're looking at this label, chances are you've already bought the darn thing. But let's have a little look inside and see what we get for our 4 to 8 grand. Inside there, we have our box of accessories, and inside there we have information on the warranty. Now, the base level warranty on this system is 5 years. So again, they've not scrimped there on the savings there in terms of the warranty support there from the brand. There's a quick start installation guide, which is frankly comedic when you're talking about a system like this. And there's more details there on that limited warranty. We have an external mains power cable. This system has an internal PSU. It is a 750 watt internal PSU there. We've also got locks there, keys there for the individual tray locks, and screws there for additional 2.5-inch media. We'll talk a little bit more about media compatibility on this later on. There's also a single Cat5e cable, which makes me want to laugh my tits off, because frankly this is unnecessary and I don't think this will ever be let leave the bag. So if we come out of there, we can have a little look at the system itself. Now, again, huge amount of rigid packaging there. Not that we're going to pay too much attention to that in this video, but still, it is a good level of protection there. And then we have the unit itself. Get that out of there. Open it up there on the table. Very delicately, I hope. And we can take a little look at this desktop system. Again, it wants to put up a fight with that bag there. We can have a little look at it. There we go. Now, this is a slightly unusual shaped chassis from stuff I've seen here on the channel. You can see there is a very wide design there. Let's get that on the table so full view. As you can see from the front of the chassis, they've gone for the horizontal arrangement there of the individual bays. Let's bring that up a little bit there. And as you can see, each of those trays, as mentioned earlier, is lockable. There's also a giant LCD panel here on the top of the system to give you real-time information about your storage, network environment, IPs, and stuff when there's alert to let you know. There's also a front-mounted USB port, which again is all right, but when you're talking about the sort of performance this thing can achieve, that is going to be largely unnecessary there, but it's still nice to have it. You might be able to do some localized upload, download to stuff that you might need on the system. Now, let's immediately talk about that price tag once again. How do I come up with a figure of 5,000 something to 8,000 or 9,000 something? Well, a big part of that is to do with the system CPU and the system memory inside. Now, this system arrives with either, as mentioned, the 8-core or a 16-core AMD EPYC processor there. Now, between them, the 8-core CPU there, and hopefully it's already on screen, knocked around for about, on CPU benchmark, at 17,000 as its score, which again puts it notably higher than most of the other CPUs I've talked about from this brand and most other brands. But once you look at the 16-core processor there, that is rated on CPU benchmark at 32,000 on CPU benchmark. It's incredibly bleeding edge. It is ridiculously high performance then. Remember, the 8-core has 16 threads and the 16-core has 32 threads. So those of you looking at virtualization are going to have an absolute field day. The 5 grand unit arrives with the 8-core, and the 8 to 9 grand version there arrives with the 16-core. Now, why is there a little fluctuation there on price? Because of memory. The baseline model arrives with 64 gig, and you can scale that up officially up to a terabyte of memory inside this system. A terabyte across 8 individual slots. If you go for the 8 grand model, that arrives with 250 60 gig, and it's RDIMM registered memory there, and it's ECC as well, all inside a DDR4. So again, supreme base level hardware there to be getting on with the CPU and the memory there. Not embedded graphics, but again, this isn't going to be that kind of rodeo with this. And anyone that's going to ask me to do a Plex test on this, I'm probably not going to, but if enough people ask, I'll do it anyway, I guess. But with regards to those individual bays, as mentioned, if we slot one of those out, as you can see, they are U2 bays. Now again, this goes straight into that system there, and it takes advantage of not only U2 NVMe storage bays, but also you can install SATA SSDs inside this, which for me is ridiculous. Why would anyone consider doing that? These are pretty high quality trays there. They're metal, they're not spring loaded, but they are fully lockable there. And again, they all go into combined data and storage data and power connectors there inside the system. There's individual LEDs at each one of those bays. When it comes to noise when the system's in utilization, it's worth highlighting, and I will touch on this later on in the video, that I will be doing software and performance testing on the 1290FX later this month in July 2022. I believe this video should be going out in July. But I'm still waiting for Transcend to send 12 SSDs for this system for that testing. So I wanted to do the hardware unboxing and review for you guys, and then I'll go on to a lot of the performance testing later on, taking advantage of some great network connectivity as well. Now, With the system and that storage media, it has a reported 14.2 internal gigabits, 14.2 gigabits per second internal transfer performance there. So again, we are talking 14,200 megabytes per second there internal throughput. And I will get onto external throughput later on. You can kind of see when it comes to anyone's ever been following things like the Red Dot Design Awards, why this kind of cropped up on there for 2022. You tend to find some of these more streamlined, super high performance devices. And I know a lot of their kind of credence with this device is to do with its design, because it is surprisingly compact for such an aggressively powerful system. I kind of get it. U2 does not take up a lot of space. I mean, for those of you that are considering noise on this device, power consumption is going to be pretty aggressive at 134 watts reported of power consumption in full population and in utilization. But in terms of noise, when the system's in idle, it's reported at 23.1 dBA, and at full access, 35 dBA, which, although it isn't super quiet, it's not that noisy when a lot of systems that are 12 bay, even fully populated with SSDs, would crack into the 40s, close to the 50s, generally at the idle stage there. So again, the fans on this must be pretty substantial, but still noise like kind of reducing overall. Now, why would anyone use a flash server? Because, you know, hard drives are getting super fast. SATA SSDs are going very fast. We've got SSD cache. We can get big, you know, SATA 2.5 inch SSDs inside our systems now. What is the benefits of a U2 flash server? Well, let's answer kind of both of those tangents there. A flash server provides the sort of performance that SSDs, once they're in, you know, combined heavy octane RAID environments, that hard drives will sit there and dream about one blissful day. A flash server, when it comes to AI organization, when it comes to fast acting virtual machines and database servers across the tens of high performance systems, if you have exceedingly high volume databases that you need super fast access to, in both in terms of read and write, that's very important as data is being accrued and created very, very fast, this is what you're looking at. If you are looking at editing 8K, when it comes to 8K, you not only need high performance storage media, but you also need high-end hardware to manage it. Because, leading on to our second point, flash servers aren't just about super fast bays. You can't just have super fast bays and then not have the organizational hardware and architecture behind them to manage them. These SSDs can push out thousands of megabytes per second, but if you don't have a CPU and a memory and a whole subsection behind it that can take that data at the speed it's being pushed at it, then it's useless. Flash servers are designed with hardware architecture that can support that multi-SSD RAID environment, and this system with that ridiculous CPU has got more than enough horses under the bonnet there. Now, carrying on, we can talk a little bit about ventilation on this system. We've got a little bit of vents there on the side. We have another little bit of vents there on the other side. The base of the system, as you can see there, rubber feet and nothing else. And on the front, if we bring it forward, you can see those ventilation holes on each and every bay there. But the real cooling is happening here on the rear. Because right there, we have those two very large 50% occupying fans there. We've also got the dedicated cooling and fan there for the PSU, as one might expect. Now, the fans, obviously, we can increase them. We can decrease them as we see fit. But you're not going to do that. Leave it on automatic. Let it do its thing. Because cooling and efficiency on a flash server probably is more important than any other form of server. SSDs get super hot. And PCIe Gen 4 SSDs get even hotter. And U.2 and even U.3 SSDs in any storage server in PCIe Gen 4 get exceedingly hot. So again, cooling is going to be the name of the game here. I kind of thought there'd be a little bit more cooling, but I'm assuming those fans at least, you know, work that extra bit harder there. You can see there on the base of the device a couple of CAT ports there. They are our copper connections. They are both 2.5 GBE, which normally when I talk about a NAS, I'd be like, yay, 2.5 GBE, yippee. But in this system, I'm way more occupied with these two ports here. Those are 25 GBE fiber ports there. So there's 2 of them, meaning this system, by default, because that's going to be a keyword later on, arrives with a possible 50 gigabit Ethernet external connectivity there on the rear of the device there. So again, you are talking a significant external output there of 5,000 megabytes per second possible via link aggregation. And of course, you're going to need a supported switch there. Now, whether you deliver that into maybe a combination switch where it has a 25 GBE ports there for it to combine with, and then a bank of 10 GBEs, 2.5 GBEs and 1 gigabit Ethernet ports there to be shared across the rest of the network, so they can all have ridiculous full connections to this behemoth of a storage device, you're going to feel the benefits of that. But it's when we look at these little bad boys down here that we can get super excited. And that's because these PCIe upgrade slots are PCIe Gen 4. Now, one of them is a PCIe Gen 4 times 8. So you're already thinking, nice, that's a potential 14 to 16 gigabytes, not gigabits, gigabytes of throughput there, which is going to be pretty darn sweet there. And then you find out the other ones are PCIe Gen 4 times 16, and then everyone loses their mind, because that means this system can be occupied with a huge arrangement of network interface ports there. These 3 of these ports can then be utilized with combination 10 gigabit Ethernet multi-port cards there. And again, we aren't just talking 1 or 2s there. We are talking further 25 gigabit Ethernet ports there and greater. There are the 4-port 25 GBE cards there that this can be utilized with. What I'm saying is, this is a system that does not have compromise in its storage media. It does not have compromise on its CPU and memory. It does not have a compromise on its base level external connectivity, and certainly in terms of its scalability. And don't lose sight of that 1 terabyte memory upgradability there. Now, we got to talk about what other stuff we can do with that hardware. We will get onto ZFS in this system in a wee while, but it's worth highlighting that not only can you install AI supported add-ons like the Google TPU, which again, its usability in the QNAP architecture is still relatively early days. It's still going to be nice to utilize that, but stuff that isn't so much in its early days is 1, utilization of QNAP's Mustang performance enhancement cards. So again, there's even further ways in which you can improve the base level performance of this device. But then on top of that, you can take advantage via those individual ports there of graphics cards too, which you may wish to assign to individual virtual machines, and therefore have that insanely powerful yet remote accessing and very stable storage environment for your virtual machines. Continuing on the subject of upgrading via those PCIEs, let's actually take a look at some of those 25 gigabit Ethernet upgrade cards. This is the QNAP card, and again, very petite. It is a 2-port card, if we can ever get it out of the bag, and as you can see, it is a dual port card there. And again, you are going to need those specialized SFPs for this. This is not going to be taking advantage of copper connections there, and it's even got an onboard fan there and heatsink working across the controller inside this device. So again, this does give you the idea and the utilization of having a couple of those massive performing cards in this massive performing system. Now, let's talk a little bit about the ZFS options of this system, because I think most flash users, once you reach this kind of performance we're talking about with this device, that is when ZFS rules the day over the likes of ext4 and BTRFS, of course. Now, this arrives with QUTS Hero inside there. Now, with that, you've got all the benefits of ZFS that you would like to see. So that goes from Z-RAID and the triple parity there, the much faster RAID builds, RAID resyncs, and of course RAID resilvering there. Then you've got the benefits of creating multiple worm or write once, read many archives there, all within the system. Then you've got inline deduplication and inline compression, which are always going to be hugely advantageous when it comes to larger bulk storage, and especially when you have that storage media that's going to be able to take advantage of the higher bandwidth potential available when transferring the data back and forth. Then you've got write coalescing, which then allows you to kind of change random behavior towards something a little bit more sequential when it's being delivered to the system. Now from there, you then got all the advantage of the application center from QNAP. So you've got all of the QTS stuff there in terms of virtualization with the virtualization station application. Then you've got the ones like Linux Station and containers and stuff like that. But I think from here, you're going to be looking mainly at the top tier stuff there. And again, when it comes to existing virtual machines, you can import those into Virtualization Station or utilize the Hyper Protector application to work with Hyper-V and VMware to back up your existing environment. If you're running an existing third-party SaaS setup there with the likes of Google or Workspace or Microsoft 365, you can use BoxSafe to synchronize with those in a native form for all of that accounts and emails and stuff like that. Then you've got all of the business-led applications in this system for backing up, for hybrid storage. If you want to connect some of your existing kind of blob and block storage, or even traditional easygoing third-party clouds, you can connect it with this system, taking advantage of hybrid mount to bolt that storage on, or just synchronize it with traditional synchronization methods. Then you've got Hybrid Backup Sync 3, which allows the backup via a multitude of methods, platforms, and more to create an incredibly well-developed 3-2-1 backup strategy on this. There are multimedia tools, but we're not really going to talk about them because they're not relevant to this. Ultimately, when it comes to a system that is going to back up tremendous amounts of storage and back it up tremendously fast, as well as giving you the ability to access and edit files on this system at the fastest possible speed in 2022 in a bloody domestic desktop box, which, lest I remind you, is $5,000. This thing is near unbeatable value for money. Again, that number, $5,000, a big number in some ways and a very small number in others. Now, it would be remiss not to touch on that QNAP has had to take its lumps recently, hasn't it, in terms of being targeted by ransomware attacks and targeted against and basically bringing into question the security of their platform as a whole. Now, they are getting better, and I think they really have to work on their PR machine and certainly work on how they talk to their end user base when these things happen, because no brand is infallible. Every brand is the target of different malicious individuals that are trying to exploit these systems, be they QNAP, be they Synology, be they Asus or TerraMaster. They could be EMC and NetApp, it doesn't matter. They are built on proprietary software and proprietary components that are derived from Linux, from FreeBSD. They are built on components and kernels that come from elsewhere. And these vulnerabilities, or a lot of those later vulnerabilities, are based on. Now, buying this system, if you can use it in-house, in-network, it's unbeatable. Right now, there are no flash servers in the world that you can buy domestically that can beat this. That's it. It's one right now, right? Okay. But when it comes to remote level access, when it comes to the rest of your infrastructure, it's worth bearing in mind that as cheap as that $5,000 sounds, and again, 5 to 8 or 9 grand as I put it, it's also worth remembering that does not include the media. And that's because this media in this system is one of the most expensive media you can buy. It just is. Now, I keep using that word domestic or commercial. That's because, of course, there are faster medias out there, more expensive medias out there in direct PCIe adaptation, and we're already starting to see PCIe Gen 5 storage media out there. But when it comes to buying this with easy to access storage media in U.2 form in this, that kind of storage media is 3 to 4 times the cost of traditional SSDs per terabyte there. Also bear in mind that as good as it is to have a system that is 25 gigabit Ethernet ready on 2 individual ports, the rest of the infrastructure to upgrade towards 25 gigabit Ethernet, even if it's a single switch that's going to be feeding into a bunch of copper in the rest of your network environment, is not going to be cheap. So you're going to have to provision another 5 to potentially even 10 grand of your company's budget towards fully adapting this device to your network environment and fully populating the device. You can skirt around that with partial population there, and you can skirt around it with lots of different minor upgrades to your network environment rather than a full whole-scale change. But still, nonetheless, do bear in mind that this system works at its best when the rest of the system and the rest of the network environment are tuned to its wavelength. And I think that's an important consideration with this. Whether you are looking at this for sheer kind of flash optimized utilization, or you're looking at it because you're thinking our company's got 10 grand to throw around and we want the best we can for our money to scale up later. Regardless of that, just bear in mind this system is one step in a staircase towards perfection. It is not the top step. Next up, let's take a look at the inside of this absolutely monster system. It's secured on the back by 8 screws all on the rear there. We got that empty external chassis. And let's take a look at what this system has on offer for us there. Now, as we can see straight away, there is that enormous heatsink there. If I bring that closer to the camera, once again, you will be able to get better photos on this in the links in the description over on NAS Compares. And this is one of the few fans I've seen in a NAS that is fan assisted. It has its own fan there on board. Now, the controller board that all of those M2s are, the U.2 SSDs are all banked into there on a separate controller board there just underneath the motherboard. Now, inside we can also make out rank after rank of memory there. We've got all of that there, and this is the 256 gigabyte memory device here. So each one of those populated across each one of those 8 bays already populated there. We've also got the PCIEs that we've talked about earlier on PCIe Gen 4, the 3x16 slots and the 1x8 slot there. Indeed, there's even additional power cables there for those graphics cards if you choose to install them, because some of the cards you're going to use, they're going to need some extra room. So it's nice that 750 watt PSU inside there has already got that on board for us to take advantage of. And frankly, it's a very clean system. If we bring that even closer, you're able to see there that wiring wise, it's all been funneled into that bottom compartment there, and the system itself has got plenty of air clearance. One of my earlier concerns there during the video in terms of how air is flowing through this system. Indeed, that heatsink at the top, which is a Dynatron, so again a nice little maked heatsink there, has got plenty of pass through there with that dedicated cooling fan on board that's going to be running directly into the lines of that CPU, as you can see there. But I think for now I can't really query that hardware inside the device, and there will be better photos on the blog linked in the description. But that has been the hardware review and unboxing of this, the TSH1290FX. I will be performance testing this fully populated with Transcend U.2 SSDs over 25 gigabit Ethernet and more very, very soon. As soon as those SSDs arrive, I'll show it to you guys there. Hopefully the review for this NAS is linked in the description over on NAS Compares. I would say there are links in the description to buy this, but let's face it, if you're looking at this video, there's fat chance you're going to buy this from a link in the description. I don't blame you, but I do hope you do check out the review, because there's lots more close-up photos of this, and we are going to dismantle this device to have a good look about what the internal components have got on offer for us there. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do let me know if you have. Click subscribe to learn more. Use the free advice section over on NAS Compares, and other than that, I will see you next time.